Hello and welcome to this video. I'm going to help you give a better presentation, and I'm going to do that by telling you different concepts from the field of rhetoric and public speaking, and borrow a little bit from sociology, philosophy, and academic research to help you give a better presentation. Although this is about giving presentations, what we are talking about is rhetoric. Rhetoric is a speech, essentially. It's given to an audience for a variety of purposes. You may want to inspire, you may want to motivate, you may want to amuse, persuade, inform. And a speech, no matter the subject, always requires a speaker, an audience, and a purpose. So you can think of this almost like a triangle with the speaker, audience, and purpose on each end and the subject in the middle. To be able to be persuasive, I'm going to give you an example from a few thousand years ago from the Greek philosopher Aristotle. And they said that there are three appeals that can be used to persuade an audience. Those three appeals are ethos, pathos, and logos. Logos is using logic, reasoning. Ethos is kind of your own credibility. It's more about the speaker, that what you are saying, you as a person giving the information, is credible, reliable, trustworthy. And the pathos is emotions, is using emotional languages, anecdotes, storytelling, and how that can be used in persuading an audience. Just to give you an example from our field, psychiatry, on how these concepts work, if I'm using logos, which is data, facts, I will say that 3/4 of suicide deaths in 2022 were male. Or I will say the majority of completed suicides are in men. If I use pathos, which is emotion, I will say Mr. John Doe, after breaking up with the love of their life, found that they had no more avenues left. They were recently fired from their job. They didn't feel that they could be the father they wanted to be with their children, and they saw no way out except for taking their own life. If I were to use ethos, which is my own credibility, I would say that I am a psychiatrist. I've been working in psychiatry for the past 7 years, so a good chunk of my adult life, and on a regular basis I see men with depression or men who have suicidal thoughts, or men who have thoughts of ending their life. I hope that makes sense. So what I'm going to do through the course of this video is give you specific concepts, and I'm going to use examples. Specifically, I'm going to use an example of how these concepts can be applied in the academic program that we have usually on Wednesdays. And I'm also going to give you an example from one such situation from my own life where it was not within an educational sphere, where I had to persuade an audience to follow what I wanted. Okay, so first things first, I think if you're ever asked to give a presentation and you don't feel comfortable doing it, or it gives you anxiety, reflect on why that is. And I think the answer is not that deep. The answer is that you are afraid to embarrass yourself. That in a situation you might say something strange, you might not make sense, people might be disconnected. In some way, there's a fear of embarrassment. There is a theory by Ervin, Goffman on the performed self. So if you think about that, you are always performing in some way when you're interacting with other people. If you're a doctor, when you're with a patient, you have a different professional mask on. There is certain language that you use that you don't use, let's say, when you're chilling with your friends. For example, you don't use swear words, or there's different ways you express yourself. Even in the professional sphere, there are nuances. When you're talking to your colleague, then you may be a bit more relaxed, but there'll still be a professional boundary there. When you're talking to your kids, then you are a figure of authority. Then that's different kind of mask, a different kind of performed self, as it's called, that you are there. The fear of embarrassment is there. It's a natural human condition. It's a natural human. It's a natural human emotion, fear. So I feel what I'm going to do is give you certain tools and skills so that you can become friends with it even, and kind of look forward almost to these opportunities. To be a great speaker, I feel, is to approach this almost to give a presentation as a performance. You're performing for a group of people. The simplest way to speak better is to believe in what you are saying. When you are comfortable and relaxed, you are automatically better at coming across as genuine, authentic, and increasing your ethos, your credibility. To give you an example from my own life, when I was in 8th grade, one of my teachers found out that I write poetry, and she asked me. There was Children's Day, I think, 2 days later, and she asked me to write a poem for Children's Day, and I was like, okay, sure. And then, I wrote like 8 lines, and she's like, okay, just give it to me in assembly tomorrow, or day after tomorrow. And when I went to give it to her in assembly, she was like, okay, this is great. Why don't you now go and just speak to the assembly or read out your poem? And the school I was in had about 1,500 students, and there was like a big podium there, and I've never talked. That was the first time I was ever asked to speak to an audience, and it was kind of, I had no time to prepare, and I just walked up to the mic, and they're like, hey, hello everyone, this is Hassan Malik in 8th grade, and they're going to read a poem out on Children's Day. And everyone's like, okay. And there was just some silence when I walked up to the mic. But I read it out, and when I read it out, I surprised myself with how well I did. When I finished, there was a moment of silence, and then there was a small crescendo because of people started clapping. And the secret there, the moral of the story, the point of the story is that although I had no preparation, I was proud of what I had written, and I thought I'd done a good job. And simply that authenticity, that self-belief, even in a young person in 8th grade, shone through. And even though I had no time to prepare, the self-belief in what I was saying. Notice when you are passionate about something, how you come across. Notice when you truly believe that you know that you have a strong opinion which other people should also follow. You talk different, you are more persuasive, you're more confident, your body language changes. So that's all I'll talk about in kind of talking in public. And I can say, if that didn't convince you, that it does get easier. Okay, so moving on to our next part, which is first questions. When you are asked to speak in public, when you are asked to give a presentation, there are 3 questions that you need to ask yourself. The first one is, what do you want to achieve as the speaker? What does the audience want? And what is the purpose of you speaking? Let's start with the purpose first. Using the academic program as an example, it might be to inform, might be to educate, might be to persuade people to think of a certain way. I don't think it would be about entertaining, but that could be what you want to achieve. And then that kind of makes it easier to understand how you want to go about it. Please remember, thinking about authenticity, that the purpose also aligns a little bit with you, that what do you want to achieve. To be yourself, you present like yourself. If you're a person who always cracks jokes and you know, likes, it has a lot of energy and likes to kind of laugh and be funny, then that's fine. But if you're someone who's very introverted, brooding, philosophical, and suddenly you think, oh yeah, I'm going to, you know, entertain an audience, maybe not the best way forward. So it's good to be your authentic self. You have to think about what you want to achieve. What is your goal? What is your hope? What is your hope that the audience will feel, know, and do at the end of your presentation? If you're talking about an academic meeting, then the purpose might be that you want the audience to feel informed. You want them to know certain information, certain knowledge, to provide them with certain skills, and you might want them to do something. The do something could be as simple as giving you feedback and telling you how you did, how you came across, or it might be something a bit more cosmic. It might be that you want them to change the way they practice, or how they help their patients, or how they provide care. The next question that you have to ask yourself is, what is the audience? What is the audience demographic? What are their expectations? What do they want? What can you offer? If you're in an academic meeting, then you need to know that there are other trainees here. There might be seniors, there might be juniors, and there are consultants there. And the demographic helps you understand what it is that you provide to them. If you're a core trainee attending, then your purpose might be to learn something new. That's something you can apply in your everyday practice. It might be to pass exams and be able to get some insights into scoring a bit more marks when you're sitting your exams. If you're a consultant, it might be a bit different. It might be that you want some new knowledge, you want up-to-date knowledge. And if you're giving let's say, if you're writing a research paper and they may have an interest in the subject, but they don't know what are the new guidelines, so they want to learn something new. So that is something to keep in mind. There are situations, and when I give my final example at the end of this video, where it is not educational and then there is no feedback. Your whole goal is almost like a board meeting, like a pitch meeting, where you want to convince a group of strangers to think the way that you think. Okay, so that was first question, is how you need to start. Leading on to the main part of this video is how to use storytelling techniques into engaging your audience. Again, going back into ethos, logos, and pathos. If someone makes a decision, if someone gives you their attention, there are usually three factors, three ways in which you can influence them. There's this famous saying that people forget what you said, people forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Stories are a way to transport an audience into are a way to transport this audience, and it's one of the beauties of language and communication, that we're able to tell each other stories. Most stories in modern times, even in ancient times technically, but most stories have a specific structure. They are what we call the hero's journey. Storytelling is as ancient as human beings themselves, and there's some lovely books such as Joseph Campbell's seminal work, and there's also things like 7 Basic Plots. What it's basically saying is that whether you're talking about Harry Potter, Star Wars, biblical stories, all of them follow a similar structure. I'm going to super simplify this into 3 acts, but where the first act is where you are right now, the second act is the journey itself, and the third act is the return back home as a changed person. So the hero's journey, the first act is where you are right now. It's Harry Potter in the cupboard under the stairs. It's Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, Frodo in the Shire. So this is the audience right now, where they begin at the beginning of your journey. And your job as a presenter is to make them the hero of the story. They are the protagonist. They are the person who will slay the dragons, destroy the ring, defeat Voldemort. The second part, the second act is the journey, is the trials and tribulations. This is when you present the problem. If you're in an academic meeting, this is when you talk about, if it's a case presentation, this is when you talk about your patient, what they're going through. Giving an example from before, there's a difference between saying someone was depressed and saying that every day they cried alone. One of them is visual, is almost relatable. This is where trials and tribulations come. So in the first act, if you're giving a journal club, is when you talk about the background, what was the problem, and then the middle part is how did researchers go about trying to understand and solve the problem. The final part, the third act of your presentation of a story, is when you've gone through the resolutions. Harry Potter has completed their year at school, of their faced Voldemort, and now they've learned some new spells. Frodo has learned something about themselves, and now they're returning from Mordor back to the Shire. They are now changed. You have transformed the person into someone who is more knowledgeable, and now in the final act, you have to have a plan, a strategy of what you want them to do, which is what you started with. What to do would be, for example, if you're giving a case presentation on anorexia, and then you might want them to understand the new guidelines, or you might want them to understand that at what you might be talking about refeeding syndrome, and that is the problem, that is the challenge that you have solved, that you have guidelines on how many calories per day you provide. The last part will be the action part. How are they the hero? They are the hero because now that they know how to identify at-risk people with anorexia, when they see someone in their ward or in their clinic with this condition, they will be able to act on it. They are more informed. They have metamorphized, I don't want to use that too big a word. They have developed, they have evolved into someone who is more knowledgeable from their experiences, the experience being your presentation. So that is the third act. So notice that when people make decisions on, you can give someone hard facts all day long, but they will not be convinced. Someone can understand what you are saying without adapting it. To truly make a change through your words, you have to think through all three things. You have to think about your own credibility, ethos, that okay, you are the person who did the research, you are the one who made the slides, you are the one who sees patients every day, and you are here as a guide, as either a fellow learner if you're presenting to colleagues at your level, or as someone who has energy, motivation, and the time to go deeper, which perhaps assuming someone in more senior clinical roles may not. So you are also, so you're giving facts, but you're also, and numbers, which is the logos part, but you're also telling a story. And some studies show that in certain situations, going back to what I said before, how you feel, how someone made you feel during the presentation, during their pitch, will convince them more to take up a certain action. Okay, I hope that made sense and you can understand how to tell better stories. Speaking of, storytelling is a superpower. Storytelling, but then how can you use something from your own life? So the best way, I think, a useful way of providing both ethos as well as pathos, providing both emotion as well as credibility, is to give examples from your own authentic life and story. How do you know if, let's say, you're giving a presentation on eating disorders and you personally, thankfully, don't have an eating problem? How can you talk about this? Well, you look for stories. You always look for stories on how you can link. Maybe you can talk about what is the first time you heard about anorexia. Maybe it was a movie. Maybe it was something your mom said. And that gives it a bit more, gives it more of a genuine insight. People start to think, what was the first time that I first heard about anorexia? So you make people think, you develop some sort of emotions. The best way to find good stories to tell, it's kind of like when I go to kind of social events here in London, sometimes I'm a bit jealous because some people always have amazing stories. They always know what to say. They always have a great anecdote. If you ask them, how are you? They don't say fine. They say, oh yeah, I'm really excited because today I'm working on this video and I'm hoping to try something new and teach my colleagues through a video. I'm like, how did they think to say that at that time? The thing is that not all of which is immediate. People think about the question beforehand. They think about what they're going to say at the cocktail party, or if someone asks them that question, they have a loose idea of what they want to talk about. It sounds a bit Machiavellian, but that's my understanding of things. You have to constantly think of different stories in your life and look at it, and if your presentation is coming up, keep thinking of how you can link these different stories together. So there is a concept called equal odds rule, which is actually from academia. It's from research, that the more research you create, or the more kind of research you undertake, the more likely it is to get published, or the more likely it is to be successful. So it's basically a numbers game. The more ideas you have, the more likelihood that one of them will be amazing. Thomas Edison, classic example, made hundreds, maybe thousands of patents, had a lot of ideas, and he didn't just make the light bulb. There were quite a few inventions that he patented. So keep thinking about stories and how you can link all of these through. The final part of our time together is a bit more about technical things, slide design, and also what I call audience or presenting architecture. I went to the RC Psych Congress this year, actually, in the summer, and what I noticed was that there were people from all around the world, leading experts, and generally the slides that they had were blank white slides. They had maybe 5 points, and that's it. Less is more. Busy slides are distracting. There's a very talented gentleman, I believe he's an editor in the BMJ as well, and he put in some artwork, and a lot of the Congress had simple pictures of art, I don't know, simple art on their slides. Not too much, not little. Memes are great. Other kind of again, depends what you want to achieve. If you want to entertain, maybe you want to put in some memes there. But generally, something sleek, simple, looks a lot better than something which is crowded. The other thing which I want to tell you about is, if you have to give a presentation, it's always good to understand where you are. Look at how you will be perceived from the audience. What is your body language? Is it open? Is it closed? What is the lighting like? If the light is behind you, then all the people are going to see is a silhouette. Are you under the light? Are you behind? Are you forward? If you're giving a presentation on a screen, what is your background like? Cluttered backgrounds are distracting. Generally, lighting is good. Try to find something where there are less shadows so that you don't look sinister, and see where you will stand. Will you move about? Will you be in one place? Generally, hands by the side and in a neutral kind of look is good. Crossed arms are generally not perceived to be very welcoming. There are certain, if you are designing slides, I personally don't use PowerPoint for my presentations. I use a free software called Canva, which is free. It's got a few guides there. I think it's beyond the scope of this video to talk about this, but do try it out, and maybe if you like this video and gets good traction, maybe I'll make one on how best you can use it. but it makes you, using some kind of different templates does make you stand out. And everyone has used PowerPoint, everyone knows the same diet template, so you come across as fresh. Lastly, again, talking about coming across simple things, again, talking about ethos or credibility, is how you dress. Some studies, there was this study in which people jaywalked. They basically, when the walk signal was red, they crossed the street. And the study found that if someone was wearing a suit when they walked across the street, even though the signal was red, the people waiting were more likely to cross the road and follow them. Notice that when you're crossing the road next time, hopefully at a green walk signal, but notice that when one person kind of breaks the signal or walks on a red thing or crosses the road, immediately people follow. So some of that, and notice how the people are perceived and how they look and how easy it is to follow them. To summarize, at the end of the video, we've talked about ethos, logos, and pathos, the rhetorical triangle. What questions you need to ask yourself when presenting, how to be a better storyteller and use storytelling concepts such as the hero's journey into your presentations, how to perform better using concepts such as the perform self by Ervin Goffman, how to generate ideas, as well as some technical things such as slide design. Please do leave your thoughts in the comments if you found this useful, or even if you didn't, and hopefully we'll see each other again very soon. Goodbye.